Hey, what's up, Pool Chasers? We're back from both of our trips to San Antonio and Atlantic City. We were super excited to hang out with you guys. Thank you so much for coming by the booth. It was very cool for us to hear a different aspect of the industry in different markets. So we're super excited that we were able to see what you guys all do, and really will help us gear the podcast towards some of those topics. And we had a blast hanging out with you guys. So our next stop will be Long Beach, California for the Western Pool and Spa Show, which is Thursday, March 21st through Saturday, March 23rd. Come by and see us. And we have a lot of love for California and a lot of listeners out there. So we can't wait to hang out with you guys. We will see you out in Long Beach, Pool Chasers.
This is Reed Schindler with Schindler Design Co. out of Edmond, Oklahoma, and you're listening to the Pool Chasers podcast.
Welcome to your go-to podcast for the pool and spa industry. My name is Tyler Rasmussen.
And my name is Greg Villafania. And this is the Pool Chasers Podcast.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Thank you for joining us today on episode 32 of the Pool Chasers Podcast. Our mission is to help educate and inspire in the form of a podcast. Today, we have a very special guest with us, Jimi Smith. Thank you for joining us today, Jimi.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm really impressed with what you guys are doing. I'm a big fan of it. You know, I approached you guys at the latest show in Vegas, the International Trade Show, and I was really excited to meet you guys. So I'm glad to be here and ready to go.
Awesome. Yeah, we were super excited to meet you as well. So we can't wait to get this started. Can you share with us and the listeners, what you do exactly and some of the companies that you've worked with in our industry?
Yeah, so I don't really know anybody that does exactly what I do, so I kind of have to make up my own title, but I guess to sum it up, I usually explain I'm a traveling luxury pool photographer, professional photographer, but I just focus on swimming pools now. And it's all across the states, a little bit international. But yeah, I just show up to the project, I get the job done, and I don't really know any other title than that. Some people that I've worked with in the industry, I'm going to forget people. I feel like I should list everybody I know and give a shout out kind of thing. But it's all across the board, anywhere from Manhattan all the way to L.A., North California, all the way down to Florida, then where I kind of live in the Virgin Islands in the Caribbean. But I would say locally here, like some people that you would know, Jeremy Noggle over at Premier Paradise. You guys know him.
I'm not sure. Who's that? I was just kidding. he gets a name drop in like every episode, so it's only right that...
Shout out once again, Jeremy.
Local celebrities.
Yeah, for sure.
There's another fellow, John Martise. You guys may not know. I met him through Jeremy.
No, we know.
Yeah, he's in our Facebook group and stuff.
Yeah,
John's
a cool guy.
Very cool guy.
John's a great guy. I'd say next on the list kind of is like Rick Chafee.
Okay,
those guys.
yeah, Red Rock.
I've tried with him a couple of times to connect, but it's just been, scheduling, everything else. But that's in the foreseeable future. It just keeps growing everywhere that I go. I shoot for one guy, and then everybody wants to tag along and say, who's your photographer? They track me down one way or another. But I mean, if we just went from one side of the coast to the other, I'm wearing a shirt, Jimmy Reed out in California, more the Malibu area. I just came from Malibu. I was shooting for a fellow named Ryan Clow. Then I came across, let's come back this way, towards the East Coast. Stopped in Vegas. I just shot for Tanner Ross with Poolscapes, him and his father. They're a pretty big company, been around for a long time. Here, there's a couple more guys here. If we keep going, Texas is a big state for me. You guys may know Randy Angel, Rad Designs. He works kind of closely with Pool Environments. They're pretty big builders. Joshua Buzzle, Regal Pools. Benjamin Lassiter. He's a big name. Ben's a beast, but he's in Austin, Texas. And then it just keeps going, Howard Roberts up in New Jersey, another fellow up there that I really like his stuff. I've been shooting for him for a couple of years now. And then Kansas City, Omaha, Nebraska. I got Kurt Krasinger, a fellow named Jake in Omaha that I shoot for. Kurt's in Kansas City with Lorax Design Group. I mean, I could just keep going. And I'm going to feel bad because I'm not going to say. I think
we would know if you had a house page.
Yeah, exactly. We're working on it.
I'm not going to give you any more crap. Anyway, so, you have quite the story that doesn't seem to ever end. We followed your journey on Instagram and caught you at the international show in Las Vegas, where we, talked for a little bit. And I think we knew right away, just after that small conversation we had, that you'd be great to have on the podcast. Because, photos have had a huge impact on our business. And that kind of gave us a little bit of an advantage from the very beginning with our pool service and repair company brothers, was kind of just having a different eye for it. But not only that, but putting the photos in the right place, because you got the Yelps and the Googles and Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. It's just not about taking photos. It's about taking the photos and what you do with them that's equally as important. So we started doing some research, and the best thing we could have stumbled upon was a blog kind of written, I think it was on the Tributary Revelation website, named The Well, featuring Jimmy Smith. And this was just one of the raddest stories that we had heard. And they even said in there that this could have been made into a movie. And after reading it, could kind of agree with that. So if you wouldn't mind, maybe just start from the beginning and share with our listeners the Jimmy Smith story.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Where to start? So originally, let's just start maybe with college. Start there. I originally got a degree in engineering, also got an associate's in physics. Then I moved on up the road. I went to Berklee College of Music in Boston, and I was there for a couple of years. A divorce with my parents brought me back home, came back to Athens. I was there to help Mom out, through the divorce. And
where's Athens at?
Athens is in Georgia. That's where the University of Georgia is. Big college town, lots of music. I'd say it got its real pop, with the B-52s were put them on the map, with music. And
big Bulldogs fan?
Well, if you're born and raised there, you kind of, they say you bleed red and black, as you come out of the womb. But anyway, so I come back to Athens, and I'm there, and I just enrolled, long story short, in the fine art photography program there. And it was interesting because at the same time that I'm studying fine art photography at the university, with all of the other education that I had, I only went to classes they met on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I had Monday, Wednesday, and Friday off, And so what I did, there was another Votech school down the street, maybe like 30 minutes, and they met on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So it was perfect. So I studied, actually, for my photography education, I studied fine art, which was let's shoot a picture of the tree and let's sit around and talk about it and how does it make you feel? And, it's art school, right? And then, but then I'm going 3 days a week and getting something that the other students weren't. I'm learning how flashes work. I'm learning about equipment. I'm learning, how to make money in the photography business. They pushed more of the real world commercial type deal. So it was best of both worlds. And
that's pretty cool. Did they teach you how to draw up contracts and different things like that as well?
They do at points, and it's all changed now from what it was then. Just to give you kind of a time frame of when I was in school, my senior year, my last year in photography, that was the first year that, at least at the University of Georgia, well, at both schools actually, that they were teaching Photoshop. So, I got this little baby 101 Photoshop at the very beginning, nothing like it is now. And then I had to teach myself Photoshop. I had to keep up with all the changes, just like everything else in technology. So I got out of school, and at the time I was actually managing a music venue in Athens. That's what I was doing. Through college, I worked on the weekends, usually to make money, and then that way I could make good money on the weekends and then spend the week, doing all my classwork and schoolwork. But I managed this venue for a little while. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, and I really didn't jump into photography. I think a lot of photographers deal with the same thing. Even today, they study, or any major, in college, you study, you really determine on what you want to do, and then you get out and you go, well, where's the job? And how do I put all this together? But with a photographer, especially if you're going to freelance or do your own thing, it takes a while, to get a business rolling. So I didn't really jump on it. And on a whim, I went down to Jacksonville, Florida. Don't ask me where this really got planted in my mind, but I studied at the Commercial Diving Academy. I was there for about 7 months, and basically I became a commercial diver. As soon as I got out of school, I went down and started working with a company out of Miami Diver, and they specialize in ship maintenance. So we're talking cruise ships, cargo carriers, Navy vessels, Coast Guard stuff, big ships, right? Big vessels. And we did anything under the waterline. If we could save a cruise ship company money by being able to do something underwater, whether it be welding, cleaning, whatever the job was, then they were very willing to pay us, good money, because to pull one of those ships out of the water, it can be $1 million just to dry dock one thing, and then you don't have the tourist on the ship either, at the same time, so you're losing money there, revenue. But the reason I bring that up to continue the story is we flew to all of our jobs. We work globally. So any port, on the water or on the coastline, that's typically where we'd fly and do the job, and then we'd fly out and go to the next job. You needed to be young, single, and just want to work. You were never home. Not a big quality of life, in that, but you saved all your money, And so I did that for a few years.
It's a pretty dangerous job too, isn't it?
Well, it is if you think, the commercial diving industry is something that people, they kind of hear about or see something or know it exists, but they really don't know what happens. The surprising thing is I had a teacher in the academy that told us one time, he said, 1% of the population knows that we exist, and 1% of that percent actually understands what we do. So anywhere that you have water, there's something going on. It could be a bridge. They've got insurance reasons or the government's behind it. You have to inspect these things once a year, so there's a diver on it. Water towers were an odd one to me. I have friends now that still, they travel the country and they take their gear with them, or the company ships the gear ahead, or they may work regionally for a while. But all the water towers that you see, as you drive around your local community, there's somebody that has to climb that tower, get in and video inspect and make sure nothing's rusted or anything broken, and they fix it. So it's everywhere there's water. But I think a lot of people think about the Gulf oil rigs where you dive deep and you're doing deeper work, constructing or tearing things down. That's more dangerous. But I kind of, to be honest with you, the Miami Diver gig was a real plush commercial diving job. A lot of guys wanted to get in with that company. My engineering background helped with that. They don't hire a lot of people. They only had 25 people out of the Miami office, and I got in. But back, I'll dial it back for a second. So I'm working with this company, and I'm back and forth. St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands is a huge hub for cruise ships. On any given day, we have anywhere from 5, 6, 7 ships. I've seen once, I think in the past nearly 10 years now, 13 ships in at once. And that's a lot of people. A lot of these ships carry anywhere from 3,000, some of the large ones, 5,000 and up. So multiply that by 13, pretty much, and it just floods the island for the day. But I was traveling there maybe 20, 25 times a year to do jobs. And I just love the island, and I got a chance to go diving one day with a dive shop there, St. Thomas Diving Club, one of the oldest dive shops in the Caribbean, and they wound up needing another employee, another diver. I was an instructor already at that point, scuba diving instructor, and had good mechanical skills, could work on boats. I had a captain's license already I picked up, and I basically just got burnt out, and I was in Jacksonville, Florida, actually, on a job. We were working at a Navy base. It was 1-foot visibility. It's January, 32 degrees. We're diving all dry suits. And I went back to the hotel that evening. I called the dive shop and pretty much said, all right, I'm going to put in my notice and I'm coming down. I've been there ever since. So, really wasn't doing anything with photography. But then I got on island. I was there for a few years and I started shooting underwater. That's a big passion of mine. And then there became a point where I just decided, I'm going to do what I really want to do. I'm going to go back to photography. And I really started shooting. What I would do, I'd get off work at the dive shop, and the beaches are so beautiful. The weather there every day is the same temperature. I think it's 72 degrees pretty much every evening and 84 during the day, and that's with a breeze. But I'd get off at 5 o'clock, and all I thought about other than the diving during the day was, well, what's going to be the best beach today? Where should I go shoot? And that's how I spend my happy hour, essentially. I usually take my dog with me and just take the cameras and chill out and get another shot. Well, it just turned into this thing on island where everybody's like, oh, wow, Jimmy Smith, in the photography, and people were asking for photos and how they could get it. So I started a website. And now that's where it led to the pool industry. If you would have asked me 3 years ago, what kind of photographer do you want to be, I would have looked at it and said, well, I like shooting sunsets and beaches and, landscapes. But I would have never guessed, I would become a traveling luxury pool photographer and get into this industry. But I had a friend, it's interesting, a friend from high school, and he was trying to get in touch with me. And I was actually down island, closer to South America. I went and shot I had begun shooting a lot of real estate for villas and some of these rental properties on island. And I went to shoot this house for a friend of mine. Mim is her name. She owns a restaurant on island. Her husband is from Dominica, though. And he had a house there. She wanted to shoot the pictures of the home just in case they ever wanted to sell it. you know. And so I said, sure, what's the deal? She said, well, we're going to go for 10 days. We got the house shot the first day. Now we had 9 days to run around Dominica and see essentially a rainforest kind of island. It was very, very fun. I've been back 2 or 3 times now, but I get this Facebook message. We didn't have cell phone, service there. And I get this message from an old high school friend. And his name's Shane LeBlanc. He's actually a pool designer and a builder out of Georgia. But, I get this message, and he's kind of beating me up a little bit. And he says, hey, man, I've been trying to call you. I got your number from so-and-so back from high school. I haven't been home in forever at this point. And I said, well, look, here's the deal. And then he hits me on Facebook was the point. And I said, yeah, I'm in Dominica. I won't be back on St. Thomas. I could call you in a few days. He said, well, look, are you willing to travel to shoot photography? And I just kind of laughed at it. And I said, well, I'm traveling right now, actually. I said, what do you got? And he said, have you not seen my website? And I said, bro, I haven't seen you in 14, 15 years. I said, you could be doing anything at this point. So he said,
I'm kind of a big deal. I don't know if you got the memo.
Exactly.
But everybody knows back in Georgia.
That's funny. So, and he sends me a link, and I said, oh, wow, you're building these amazing pools, And this was the first, I grew up, I lifeguarded, in college here and there, and in high school, and so I'd been around pools, and my father actually owned a hardware store, and I used to deal with all the local plumbers and pool builders, growing up. So I'd been around pools for a long time, but I had not seen what the industry was really producing, at that point. My idea of a pool, in the backyard used to be the old kidney bean with vinyl liners, just standard cookie cutter in the backyard. But I saw this and I said, wow, that's interesting, very cool. And so I flew back to St. Thomas. I think it was like a Sunday when I landed. I told him I was going to land at 3 o'clock. I think at 3:01 my phone was ringing. And I didn't know at the time what this was, a lot of these guys in the industry, they apply for awards and they have deadlines for those, right? So we were on a deadline for like that coming Friday, So I flew up and I actually shot for him and I shot for Chris Fogelman with Thrasher Pool and Spa out of Atlanta. And, like 4 pools in 3 days. It was really rushed. And then I'm editing photos on the plane ride back to St. Thomas, and I didn't even unpack coming back from Dominica. I just turned around, took my bag and all my camera equipment, went to Atlanta. And then I get the photos in. They win a bunch of awards. And then that was pretty much how it happened. The phone started ringing. Because people were saying, who's your photographer? How did you get these photos? They had not seen images, I guess, is the best way to say it, that the way I shoot or, what I was doing. And that was in the very beginning before I started crafting my skill more towards the industry. But, and then I got busy,
Yeah.
I started flying all over. I think the second person I shot for was Kurt Krasinger up in Kansas City. And then the ball just started rolling.
So we're going to go back just a little bit because it's, kind of known now that you're kind of a nomad, straight out of high school going into college, and you're just kind of, you're just doing all kinds of things, it seems like, to get away a little bit. Is there any reason in particular that you were kind of trying to get out of Athens? I mean, I know that that's home, and you still have a good relationship with your mother, but was there any reason in particular that you were kind of just so open to move around? Because, that's not easy for most people to just kind of pack up and go from place to place all the time.
Yeah, that's a great question. I've thought about that personally a lot, just like why I've always moved on kind of thing. Honestly, the best answer I can give you, right or wrong, I believe, I think I get bored really easy, and what's been interesting with the pools and the travel is it's always different. I mean, a lot of people think, oh man, are you going to get burned out on shooting pools? But there's so much more that comes with it, with the travel. I meet new people all the time. I see different builders and designers all across the country, and yes, they're in the same industry, but they all have their own way of doing things, their own style. A lot of the designers that I meet, I look at them as they're artists. I don't think, oh, wow, these guys just build pools, but they have their own taste, So it's fresh, and I don't see it. I'd say 3 years now being in it, if I was going to really start to get burnt out and eventually I would already think that way. That's what I'm telling myself anyway.
Yeah.
But, I personally feel I'm always looking for something new. I'm a pretty happy-go-lucky guy. So, and I'm always interested in learning,
Sure.
So that's been part of the attraction, It's just being able to see new things and travel,
Nice. So we heard about you like going out and looking for treasure and stuff like this. You were on a ship, but something a little bit more interesting and towards business is that you started a bottle opener business or something.
Yeah. So I was telling you earlier, just a few minutes ago, I was telling you that I bartended in school. That was I can make the most pay in the shortest amount of time, you know. And I remember Red Bulls got popular, right? And this was Jaeger bombs and the whole deal, you know. Well, I'm working at a venue. Well, I was working at always pretty high volume places. College towns can be fickle. You know, there's the hot place one weekend, and 2 weeks later, everybody's going somewhere else. So I moonlighted around for a while. But then when I wound up at this final venue that I was working at, and I managed even after I got out of photography school for a while, you know, we held like 1,200 people or more, you know, the occupancy level. And you get 1,200 people, especially when that's popular, and they're coming at you. Try opening 300-400 cans, you know, a night. So I backed up. You know, I started thinking with my engineering background. I basically, if you've seen the 6-inch, 7-inch like flat, they call them church keys was the old name for it, but it's what you see every waitress and bartender carrying, either tucked behind a wristband, you know, on their arm or in their back pocket. I didn't want to change what already worked, but I wanted to make it better. You know, I wasn't going to try to fix something that wasn't broke, I guess you could say. So long story short, I basically put an attachment on one end that opens cans. Okay. So all night long, you know, that helped. You know, I had all the other bartenders in town that saw my in the garage, you know, filed, really, really weak prototypes, you know, back at that point. They saw that and people were requesting it. They said, "Man, can you make me one of those?" And I was like, "Wow, you know, it took me 72 hours to make this one." Sure.
Right.
Give me a week. You're like, or give me like 6 months because you're like number 8 in line for it.
I'm gonna need a box of those. Stat.
Yeah. Can I get 700 of those like with my logo? So, and then that's what happened. Through mutual friends, I met another friend that I kind of, you know, we went into business together, and his father owns a large die casting company outside of Atlanta, and they typically make car parts. You know, this is what, think about it. I'll paint you a picture. When you see the machines in the movies or documentaries coming down, they're slamming out car bumpers or fenders, that kind of thing. They're called progressive dies. These things can be up to 400 tons, you know, when they drop. But they were doing largely car parts, and then we were kind of a new product, you know, something a little different for the business. But we built the tools, we, you know, got rolling, and then I kind of got into the industry. It's not something that I still push. You know, I'm doing the photography, you know, and that's where I'm really at, you know, these days. But I still get emails at the website. I kind of let it go. It kind of went organic, so to say. And, you know, just 2 days ago, right before I came here, I was filling an order for Sweetwater Brewing, which is a company in Atlanta. You know, they wanted like 500 openers, and then Terrapin Beer is another. I've got more East Coast friends, you know, because that's where I was spurred from. But, yeah, I still make openers. And then it was interesting. I had to make my own off my first patent. You know, on the first design that I did, I realized I needed to make a knockoff of that. I needed a cheaper version before somebody else did it. So I did that. So we have a 2.0 kind of version of it. And then I had a request from somebody, a big company out in Colorado. And off of talking to them, I started making we call it a business card opener. But it's great. We put a graphic overlay on this thing. The artwork's printed on the back. So what I'm trying to say is the customer or the client or the person carrying the card, they never touch the ink. So the cards last. But it's the same, the laminate, the clear coat that goes over the artwork. It's the same thing that's like the non-scratch on your iPhone, you know, whatever. I mean, you could cut it with a key or a knife, something if you really try to break it. But and I've had more success with that, you know, out of all of my openers. But yeah, still to this day, that's been 10 years, you know, I guess, like doing those. But
wow, that must be hard to fill orders when you're on the road so much.
Well, I do all the graphics myself, and you know, that's another thing. If I pushed it even more,
yeah,
you know, it's going to pull me in 2 directions right now. But no, it's really not that bad. I just, especially if I have long-term clients, because once I've done their artwork, you know, they may change a little thing here or there, but 90% of the time they say, hey, we need another, you know, 1,500 openers, you know, for this year. And I just punch the order in. I was lucky. I've set everything up where I can be remote. You know, I've got from the manufacturing point to adding the artwork, with printers, and everything's drop shipped. So I don't really have to be in Georgia, to do that. So
I was going to say, probably don't want to send a tracking number. Like, oh, you're not getting a tracking number. We'll send it out when we can.
Right.
No, that's super cool. I have to put in that order for a Pool Chasers one. That'd be super cool.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
So what's going on with the treasure hunting, the commercial treasure hunter?
Oh, wow, man. How long do we have?
It's just such an interesting story.
So I have a really good friend who's got his own crazy story, but a fellow named Charles George. I met him. There was a spring break in college where everybody went to the beach, to do the beach thing. And with that week off, I took off and went to Charleston, South Carolina. And I just wanted to get, at that point, the first stage of a captain's license, and I went and took the book work and did the class for a week. But I met this gentleman there. And that's about the same time I was doing the bottle openers and looking at patents and how to apply for that. And Charles had been an investment broker for years. And he was in the class I didn't know at the time, the reason he was, investment brokers in his classes, he had this deal kind of cooking. He was big in the diving industry. I had already kind of represented a lot of people in the diving industry, and he had a good friend, Bob Marks. I don't know how much you guys really know about treasure hunting and the whole, that.
Quite a bit.
Yeah.
I've seen Pirates of the Caribbean quite a few times.
There you go. Fool's Gold.
It's like that, right?
I like Sahara. That's a good one.
Oh, Sahara's good too.
Well, so Bob is, one of the most world-renowned treasure hunters on the planet. I mean, he's found ships all over the world. And at the time, and then I was interested, if you remember, in getting into commercial diving. So this kind of pushed that idea a little more conveniently. But Bob was looking for somebody. He had several Spanish galleons that he's found over the years that were in the water. And he had already identified, I think, one out of the three. And he was looking for a manager. He was looking for a general manager to work a vessel for the first one he was going to, excavate or pull everything out of the ocean bottom. And I went down through Charles, met him, kind of did a real loose interview, and one thing, he said in the end, he said, okay, Jimmy's got the job. Like, I like Jimmy. He can come on board, and especially if he goes through the Commercial Diving Academy, he'll come out brand newest, this and that, driving ROV, underwater, equipment. And he just wanted somebody. He came from the old school. Everything was diving with tanks and regulators. He wanted to do everything hard hat. There's a lot more liability, in that business now, if you're doing commercial stuff. So I went through the program. The people at school knew, hey, wow, Jimmy's going to be on the History Channel, in a few months after he graduates, because all those guys knew who he was at school. All the instructors, they're big into the treasure hunting world, and that whole passion. But so I graduated, and that was after the economy, the dump we had in 2008, but this was more like right around 2010. So I got out, I went to Charleston, and I was staying, actually, Bob had helped finance my friend Charles through the maritime law school there in Charleston. Charles just basically went back to school to become an attorney just so he could represent Bob, and Charles was a good guy for it. But I went up, we were actually getting ready to do sea trials, and we had a vessel that was coming into port, and they were looking at people to hire and all that. Well, then Spain pipes up and says, wait a minute. They said, we don't care about international, found in international waters and who identified the wreck and all the old legalities and if you actually find a treasure ship or a sunken wreck. And they said, we're in trouble because, that 2008 bubble, that hit globally for a lot of people. And they said, that's our gold, was our gold in the beginning. We want it. We're going to court. And so Bob put the brakes on that. He said, listen, this could change everything for everybody forever, depending on how this case gets ruled. So he said, my hands are tied. I can't invest money and go out. I mean, it's millions of dollars, especially if you were going to do it the way they were with the History Channel, Discovery, ghost writers on board, video crews. I mean, they were going to make the documentary as we actually pulled stuff out of the ocean. So that's actually how I wound up at Miami Diver. I sat around and I called. The school was calling me actually. One of the job placement guys. He called. He said, "Are you on the treasure hunt yet? When are we going to see you on television?" I said, "Well, we kind of had a monkey wrench, and they had actually seen the reason all that got started. I don't think I said it was they there was a company, Odyssey, that had found one of the largest finds to date, right around the time of the bubble. And when they brought this ship in with all the gold, I mean, as far as you could see on the deck of this boat, it was just 5-gallon buckets full of gold coins. And I mean, I don't even know what the final number equated to with, how much that's worth today. But, as they showed up at port, came in Florida, customs takes everything. There was a documentary on it. I don't remember the title of it. But so, yeah, that's when the lawsuit started, and all that with Spain. And it's still to this day, they really haven't resolved it. All the gold's sitting somewhere locked up and nobody sees it and, whatever. But
that's pretty wild. Did they ever talk about why all these ships with treasure and gold and all this stuff back in the day sunk in the first place? It seems like if you had treasure on your ship, it was going down. Like you would think if pirates or anybody was trying to bring these ships down, they'd do a better job of getting the treasure off of it and then letting it sink.
Well, I'm sure there's a lot of stories that were successful and ships made it. A lot of that stuff was coming over from Europe, as they were expanding, into the Caribbean. But yeah, I mean, storms are a big thing. I mean, hurricane. I live, especially down. They filmed a lot of Pirates of the Caribbean. They're close, in our proximity around the Virgin Islands and more in the BV Isles. But yeah, a lot of the ships just got trapped in hurricanes, bad weather, and just went down. But then I'm sure a lot of them got robbed. There's a lot of history to it. It's interesting. If you really, instead of just watching the movies, and all that, but if you really start reading about a lot of the history, there's a lot of cool stories, to it. But yeah, a lot of gold in those oceans.
You guys ever run into any pirates
in St. Thomas? Oh, I mean, just no.
No pretenders.
I was just thinking about some of my local friends, that'll hit you up for anything. Come on, man, come on, let me give me that.
Right. No, because we it's crazy. Probably about 10 years ago at your wedding. Your guys' friend's husband was a Navy SEAL, and he got contracted out to pretty much, they bring their own weapons and stuff, and they hunt pirates because it's a big problem. And there's a lot of people that'll, they have a private ship or something, and they go out and they just hunt pirates, and he was one of them. It was really weird because he was like the chillest guy. I would never think he was a Navy SEAL. And he's like, yeah, and then he starts going over all the, weapons that he brings, and they're like, yeah, we had this one time I was like, oh, you've done it?
Oh yeah, that dude's insane.
Where'd you see? Was that on Indeed or something? Must bring own tools, journeyman, pirate hunter.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it does go on, because that kind of sparked my memory there. When I was working for Miami Diver, I said we went global. We could go to Europe, we could go to Australia. It didn't matter, wherever the job was that we needed to do. But I remember there was a magazine that we used to get, and it was even online. And there for a while in the Middle East or wherever, there were. Wait, take it back to make it make more sense. What's the Tom Hanks movie?
Castaway.
No.
The one where
where the pirates jump on the
Somalia?
ship.
Yeah. So that was based off true story, but there was a lot of that going on, and you'd have guys that would take over a large vessel for whatever they had on
Captain
it.
something.
And then, the local governments were even supporting that. If they took over the ship, they could just sell it right back, to their homeland, essentially. And then, they're under protection, but.
Captain Phillips just looked it up. That's what it was.
I didn't do any jobs where I was in that area, but I had friends and other coworkers that did. It's a big deal. They're going over there trying to, you're working on a ship and potentially, that could happen to anybody. So
that's got to be a huge problem. I mean, some of those people, just like in Captain Phillips, that's what they do for a living. They've done it since they were little kids. They get on these rowboats and they will for sure take over a ship. They have the capabilities of doing it because that's their craft.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So who is the famous Tilt?
Who is the famous Tilt? He's the rock star. I'm just chopped liver. I follow him around everywhere. Tilt is my dog. He was born on St. Thomas. Everybody always asks about the name. He was born kind of with a weak neck muscle, and we had to kind of help that out, lift his head to, rehabilitate it, essentially, And, therefore, there's the name Tilt. He still does it today. But Tilt's a trained service animal. And, with all the travel that I do, it's either you have a dog or you don't. you know. So I really just now he loves it. He travels with me everywhere, and he loves it absolutely. It's a little more responsibility and a little tougher on me, you know. But at the same time, he also makes things easier. You know, I tell people all the time, I go through the airport, right? And everybody just magically gets out of my way, you know, like he kind of parts the waters. He's a German Shepherd. He's part Shepherd and part Wolf. But I don't know. You know, it's funny being a dog owner, and you might agree with this, having dogs yourselves. But
Kyle.
Kyle. We don't have dogs.
They're the opposite.
I had a guinea pig for 1 week before it made its way to Craigslist.
Well, Kyle and I were just talking before we sat down. You know, he's got pit bulls, and you know, some people are terrified of dogs. You know, I don't know if that's something that happens to them when they're small. You know, they have a bad experience. But Tilt's, you know, he's part German Shepherd and part Wolf, actually, and he's jet black, you know, solid black, and he's a big dog. He's 82 pounds, I think, now. And you know, so some people, when I come through the airport, even at TSA, you know, I see it happening when I'm in line before I go through security. I see some of the agents going, you can help him, you know. You know, or,
You got this.
yeah, I'm going to go over here. I'm going to take my break. But yeah, so, and then I've been pulled out of line. You know, people are like, hey, you know, come on up forward. You know, we'll help you out. A lot of times when I board the planes, I don't ask, you know, for this, but when I board a lot of the agents, you know, and this helps flying so much, you know, with my job, they'll say, hey, if you want an extra minute, you know, this is after they put wheelchairs on, or people, you know, in the military, that kind of thing, or mothers with babies, you know, or just even elderly folks that need more time. Then they look at me and say, hey, you're a special kid. Come on, you know, you need to get on the board, you know. But we'll get him settled, you know. So that helps some. And but yeah, Tilt, he's been good, you know. It really on the road. It could get lonely on the road, you know. Always in a hotel, always traveling, and but you know, always man's best friend. You know,
Yeah.
I got my buddy, you know, with me all the time. So
Do most hotels let you have dogs in them?
no. But with his paperwork as being a trained service animal, it's actually, I mean, legally, they pretty much have to let me in. Some hotels, some higher end hotels will charge for that. But 99%, you know, I've never had a problem. You know, if I show them the paperwork and let them, and a lot of times I'll let them know as I book my schedule. I'm usually a month and a half to 2 months out, you know, trying to stay booked. And as I make reservations, I just put a note on it, and they say, okay, we get the deal. It's fine. So,
Nice. I think we were all pretty surprised when we met him yesterday how well-mannered he was. And just seeing him on Instagram, there was one where just a little girl on the beach was, you know, telling him to sit and do all this stuff, and then, you know, threw the ball out in the water, and he went out and got it. It's like, dang, like, that's pretty impressive that even taking orders from, you know, somebody else, not just you.
Yeah, he's got hand signals that he's known, you know, his whole life, and then he's really well mannered. If I take that jacket off of him, you know, then he gets a little not crazy or anything, but he's ready to play. He knows when the jacket comes off, you know, serious time's over, and you know that's where you see people that have service animals or trained service dogs, and you know, a lot of people know, a lot of people don't. But you know, I'll see kids sometimes, they say, "Ooh, look at the dog," you know, and they want to pet him, and the mom will say, "Wait, you know, he's wearing a jacket, he's working," and kind of thing. But if you let people do that, if you let people pet him while he's got the jacket on, then it confuses him because he thinks, "Well, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be calm and you know be the cool dog, chilled out." But you know, if you confuse him that way, you're messing up his training.
Yeah,
you follow me? So.
Does he usually look at you like, "Hey, Dad, what's going on here? Are you paying attention?"
Yeah, he usually
put the camera down for a minute.
He checks with me a lot, you know, before he does something. You know, I'll have people call him, and he'll look over, and I'm like, "Go ahead," you know. So he's like, "All right, cool, I can go play. I got the okay." But yeah, I've been a real positive, you know, traveling with him. You know, up until as I progressed, as I got busier and busier, you know, now it's become full-time shooting photography, where it was, you know, go out on the road for 2 weeks, you know, and then come back and be home, you know, for a week, and then set up another trip. But those are the old days, you know, and I used to be able to let somebody watch him. At first I thought, you know, it's going to be a lot of time on the planes and all that. But yeah, on our last flight, coming out here to see you guys, I went to LA first, and from Atlanta, that's like a 4.5 hour flight, you know, but I throw the ball with him in the mornings before we get on the plane. He's down on the floor. You know, everybody's looking around going, man, this is a long flight for that dog, but he was out. You know, he just knows the planes now. He's like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna chill out and sleep. But then, boy, once that plane lands, you know, he's ready to go. So.
Right.
What's up, Pool Chasers? We hope you're enjoying the episode so far. We have some exciting news. Our sponsors, Jobber, they've come out with a $19 price plan for all you one pullers out there. They understand, you know, that pool companies don't always have a large team, so they wanted to give you an option of using a professional software to help you stay organized and be the most efficient you can while you're in the field. I definitely know I wish I had this option when I was a one-man show. You know, Greg and I have always felt that it was important to look as professional as possible because we believe that it definitely helps you win jobs. Customers will choose the ones that are most professional in our opinion, so, you know, having the option to make quotes and invoices through the app would have been amazing help with that. You know, not to mention keeping all of our notes in one place instead of, you know, in a notebook or in a piece of paper that we could easily lose. So, you know, we know it's tough out there and we believe Jobber can help you guys stay organized and get the most out of your job. So to try it out, go to getjobber.com/poolchasers. That's getjobber.com/poolchasers.
Also, if you guys missed episode 30, we discussed how we are now doing Pool Chasers full-time. That's right. We are doing it full-time. We're super excited for it, guys. It's a very big step as husbands and as fathers, but we truly believe in the message. We 100% believe in the Pool Chasers community. You know, so we launched our Patreon page. So if the podcast has brought you any value at all, please consider donating financially. Every little bit helps. We're very committed to bringing you guys the best content possible. This will help us go out and get that content for you. So if you believe in the podcast as much as we do and you want to sign up to be a patron, go to patreon.com/poolchasers. That's patreon.com/poolchasers. This would mean the world to us, guys. We truly appreciate your time and your ear. We will not take it for granted. Thank you so much for your support.
So let's talk about, you know, just how you got into the pool industry. I know you covered it a little bit, but, you know, what was your first job and was there any kind of obstacles you had to overcome? Because I think, you know, you have a degree pretty much for photography. You're a professional, but there's something to be said about doing photography for different types of things. You know, you could have, you know, there's some skateboard photographers that I love, but they can't exactly, you know, just switch into doing swimming pools that easy. It takes time because you have to learn, you know, how everything works. And, you know, we were with you last night at a pool on Camelback, and it was really cool kind of just seeing you 100% focused on what you were doing, and you just knew what shots you wanted, and you wanted these features off, and then you wanted these on. And so what were, you know, some of those obstacles when you first got into it?
That's a really good question. And you're absolutely right. You know, I'm not a fashion photographer. You know, I don't shoot portraits. I don't do weddings. I've done weddings before. I've tried a little bit of everything. But I think, you know, no matter what genre you're in, you get into something and get submerged in it, and then you just build on that specific photography, you know, and what the obstacles are, you know, in that specific genre, you know, of the industry. The obstacles that I first faced, first pools I shot in Atlanta, you know, I'd never really tried, okay, I've got a fire feature over here, then I've got a water feature on this side, you know, that's pouring out like a scupper or a sheer descent, that kind of thing. And then, you know, with things on, you've got builders that, one thing that I learned real quick, everybody was talking to me about reflections. Oh, if you can get the reflection. Well, you can't get a reflection off of water when all the water features are on because everything's, you know, rippling. Yeah. And so that was the tough part in the beginning. You know, I could see I was learning really quickly what made a good pool shot, you know, what people were looking at or looking through magazines like Luxury Pool Magazine or just Instagram accounts, anything, any photos that I saw in print too, you know, I was looking at, okay, they like this photo because of this and that. And then, but I guess to answer your question more clearly, the obstacle is you cannot get, if you look at a lot of my photos and I've had people ask me, you can't get the type shots that I get in one exposure. There is no one click because think about it, and I don't want to get too deep into the, you know, how photography works here and confuse anybody, but if you've got a fire feature, you need a camera, you need a fast exposure to freeze frame that fire. If you don't, it's going to blur. You know, I call it troll hair. You remember the little things that sit on people's head?
Yeah.
I don't know another better analogy.
The trolls are back.
Yeah, trolls are back. We don't like the trolls in photos. So, but if you've got that going on and that tells you need a fast exposure for that, then now you've got water moving somewhere and you actually want to blur that. A lot of guys like that better because it's smooth. You know the effect I mean, right? Mm-hmm. That may take a 1 second, 2 second, just depending on time of day kind of thing, exposure. Well, there's no way in one shot to go click. And, if I do the 1 second exposure for the water feature, now I got troll hair in the fire, right?
Yeah.
So, and then again, if you want a reflection off the water, you've got to turn everything off in the pool, that's moving the water. Sometimes let it sit, 2 or 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, depending on the particular pool. And you wait until you can shoot an exposure for that. So what I do that's different and where I really started pushing my skills and teaching myself, I came from a film background where you always try to expose, knowing that you couldn't get everything in one shot, but you just had to choose, what's the lesser of the two evils kind of, do I go with the fire or the water, right? But nowadays with digital, you're able to shoot multiple exposures and combine, layer things like stack exposures on top of each other. So my camera, if you guys remember last night, it'd take me 10 minutes to do one photo, right? And the bigger the project, the more things going on, it can take longer. But I try to go quality over quantity, but I spend the time. The camera goes on the tripod, and usually the first thing I say to everybody is like, look, there's one rule, guys. I don't care what else you do. If you're around while I'm shooting, just don't touch the tripod, because if the tripod gets bumped, we're starting all over, But that's for all of the layers to match up. I don't want things to be shifted or off. I have to keep that thing still. But so that's what we did last night. I would shoot exposures for the fire, right? Freeze frame that. We had that little water feature. It wasn't much coming over. It wasn't so apparent, going to be in the final edits, but we definitely turned everything off to let the water go flat. And then on top of that, if you guys saw what I did, I went around and I used a flash. Like I basically bring light with me, essentially. And I chose to light up areas, to make things look better. So, an average shot can have, I don't know, it depends on the scene, but anywhere from 3-4 pops to maybe even 20. I've had, I would say on average, I can have 20, 25, 30 exposures that I blend all of those together, in the end to get the final shot. But the point was, bottom line is, when you look at those photos thinking that way, once you've heard that whole spiel, you go, well, wait a minute, I see what he's saying. There's no way to get these shots, in one exposure. So that was the big obstacle. I was hearing what the pool builders were telling me in my ears. They're saying, look, we want a reflection, and we want the fire to be real crisp, and can you do that moving water, in the background? Oh, and then can you make sure that the spa's lit up and we can see the tile? I have to flash a lot of things to bring that out, And I'm like, yeah, I can do it, but I really got to get to work here and figure out my own system, to do that. So that's the difference. A lot of guys, when I talk to them, they say, how long is it going to take, or how many photos do we get? And I'm like, again, quality over quantity. I don't even like giving people a number, because some projects don't take as much. There's not as big of a project, but then some are monsters, and it can be 30, 40 shots in the end, a lot more time put into it. But it's just the way I've come across it and the way I do it now,
And why is it so important that, builders have a good photographer like yourself doing their photos? I mean, what are they doing with these photos exactly?
Well, I really think it's all about marketing, right? I mean, I used to say in Athens, when I managed that music venue I spoke about earlier, we could have had the Rolling Stones playing on a Friday night, just hypothetically, But if nobody knew the show was going on, nobody's going to be there. Nobody's buying a ticket. Nobody's coming out. I personally think with all of the builders that I work for and all these beautiful projects that I see, I mean, if that's your business, how are you going to find new clients? If you don't show them, I don't think the project is fully done until it's been shot, and that's not me just supporting, hey, hire Jimmy kind of thing. But I just think in business, that's the truth. I mean, you have to show people your work, and you want to show that in the best way possible, to get more work. So,
right. And what services do you offer? If you were to bring the majority of your equipment to a job, what do you usually got in the bag?
Oh, wow. So you guys pretty much saw everything. I mean, I'm traveling now, so you see just about everything I bring with me. But there's probably, I counted up at one point, probably 45 grand worth of equipment, you know, between on my back and one Pelican case and a tripod and et cetera, et cetera. But I've got 2 cameras. I shoot with Nikons. Currently, I'm shooting with D810s. They're fine for the resolution. They're bigger than Ansel Adams would roll over in his grave, you know, if he could see the resolution we have now. But they're fine for what we do. I don't need the newest and latest thing. You know, these things can print almost billboard size, you know, and still be fine. So for 8x10, you know, magazines or, you know, anything on Instagram websites, you know, we've got plenty of resolution with those. But I have 2. A lot of people ask, why do you carry 2 cameras? Well, what happens if I get to the job and one's going to crap out at some point, you know, and go bad? So I have to have a backup. Then I've got multiple flashes. I pretty much stick with the flash I was using that you guys saw last night. I bought that towards the beginning of the season last year. It was one of the best investments I ever made. It's a Pro Photo B1X, and I mean the thing you can get on one battery charge. Which one thing I really loved about it was, I think I can get over almost 400 flashes at full power, and a full power on that flash. You guys saw it. It's like a little cannon, you know. It's brighter than daylight. So, but I don't use it on that power. So I mean, I can shoot 4 or 5 days in a row usually on one charge, you know. And then you saw that beauty dish is what that's called, that kind of umbrella that goes on the end of it. That's there to soften light, and I can control, you know, how the light moves over an object, you know, with that. But I get a really big spread. I can throw light across an entire backyard if I need to in one pop. Now, what I was doing when I started, and I started adding flashes and layering exposures and all these things I'm talking about, it's kind of funny. It reminds me, a lot of builders across the country started calling me the Flash, right? Because I walk into this.
It's a pretty cool name.
I'll take that name for sure.
But I come in, and what I was using was a monopod, you know, so it's like, and I put a smaller speed light flash on the end. And that was so I could reach out, you know, to get to places and reach over into pools and that kind of thing. Now I've got enough power where I don't have to do that. I can throw light much farther, but yeah.
You were getting into pools too, like in the beginning, right?
Well,
kind of getting into them and having to shoot
I
it.
still do, you know. It's funny, you know, I've got several pictures you've probably seen on social media. You know, we always laugh. Just in L.A., Ron Cloud was like, all right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do the common thing everybody does. And I turned around and said, what is it? And he goes, I'm getting my picture of Jimmy while he's shooting a picture, you know, at my project. And, you know, I'm always behind the camera, never really in front of it. So, but yeah, I've got several people always get those photos once I'm barefoot and pants rolled up or in board shorts or something, you know, like crawling around in the pool.
It's really weird being on the other side of it, because you have to like ask people sometimes. Like I'm usually not in photos, so I'll be like, hey, I don't know how to say this. Can you take a picture of me?
Right.
Like, just want people to know I exist.
Right.
This is the last picture was taken of me. I was 5 years old.
I have a whole folder of pictures of Greg.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't
You're
worry
welcome.
about it. I'll throw them
A
out.
whole terabyte hard drive of pictures of me. Yeah, that's awesome. But
so your question, you were asking what I bring to jobs. What you want to go back to that question?
yeah. So the other thing too is I know that you do drone shots as well.
Oh yeah, definitely. Usually the first thing I do when I get to a job is put a drone in the air. I use if you're interested in what I fly, I use a Mavic 2 Pro. It's just what I've had, one of the first drones I bought. And I think it's really important, you know, especially for the builders, because what's the first drawing they do? You know, if they're designing a pool or laying something out, they're doing a top down, you know, kind of satellite view drawing of the project. And that's the best comparison. You know, a lot of guys will take that drone shot, just a straight down shot, and you know, post that next to what they're drawing. It kind of makes them, it shows like the accuracy of their work. You know, hey, this is what we showed the client we can build, and this is exactly what they got. So that's important. And then also, you know, you're able to get, I feel like the minute you put the drone in the air, you're just getting an angle that nobody really sees. You know, so it's got a natural kind of makes the photos more interesting.
It's like another service you're tacking on too, because it's cool to see all these beautiful photos, and then there's like a top down shot of the entire build. That's pretty cool. Have you ever had any issues flying the drone? Because I know that I didn't realize it, but you know, when I got my first drone, that it was pretty loud, and kind of gets everybody's attention. And then, you know, if you're by an airport,
Everybody wants to come
can't.
talk to you while you're flying the drone, right?
Yeah, and it's like, dude, I don't even know how to fly this thing. I'm going to try and get it down before the battery dies. You know what I mean?
Remember you tried to fly it over that pool that one time and like it almost landed in the pool and there was like you were like on the edge like trying to grab it so it
man.
didn't go in the pool.
Mike, the YouTube thing said that if I put my hand out, and it was doing it, I think I was more scared because I was like, God, don't go in the pool, please.
Yeah,
'Cause
and you
I
was
will-
like brand new. That was the second time you flew it or something.
We'll lay out for it.
What kind of drone do you have, or did you have before you crashed?
I still have it. No, it's been good. I think it's only gone like a couple bushes or something, but I think it's not the Mavic. Is it like the Storm or I'm not sure. I know it's was it DJI?
Yeah.
DJI.
Yeah.
I'm not sure which one it is, but it's like I think it's right below a Mavic Pro though.
Yeah. So I saw some guys that when the drones first
Spark.
Okay.
There we go.
Yeah.
I don't remember the company, but I found this thing. It was like on Alibaba, if you're familiar with that, like
Yeah.
overseas website. And it only took like 2 months for it to come in once I ordered it, you know. But I had these tiny. At the time, it was this world's smallest drones. You know, they're like $19, right? So I bought 2, and I had them shipped to the islands. And I started, and these things were squirrely. I mean, there was no GPS, no anything like that in it. But I had seen a fellow on YouTube he worked in the movie industry, and he was one of the first guys really doing drone shots, you know, back then. And he said, look, this is what I recommend, and I followed his advice. So I bought 2 of these $19 little squirrely drones, little toys essentially, but the controlling was the same, yaw and pitch, you know, it just like the nicest drone you can on the market, probably you can buy. They're all controlled the same. And he said, learn how to fly that first because you can wreck that thing everywhere and, you know, you're not out of pocket. He said, and then, you know, crawl before you walk kind of thing, step up. So I took these things and, you know, they charged by USB cord. You know, I'd plug them into a laptop, took 5 minutes to charge this little battery, and then you got like 3 minutes of flight time. But I would just hover them maybe an inch off of the tile, you know, on the floor in the apartment. And I just learned how to go forward, backwards, do figure eights, you know, whatever. And then I got crazy and, you know, got like a foot off the ground, you know. But then, you know, once I learned that.
Those little ones are much more difficult.
Oh, and that's the point.
I bought one of those little ones from Toys R Us, and I whacked Kareen in the head with it. Like, it's just like, zzz, and just shoots across like, whoa, I don't know. It's like, bam. It's like, you know, this thing's got to go.
Yeah, and so, you know, I broke one, like when the Tilt tried to eat it also, you know, he's chasing around the apartment. But anyway, so the minute I bought it, the first one that I bought was the Mavic Pro. And I mean, you add the GPS to it, all that other stuff, and then boom, it's a piece of cake, you know. And I came, I guess, you know, my drone experience, you know, coming up with it was if you could fly those little squirrely guys, you could fly anything. Now, problems that come with it, if you get too close to an airport, you know, they've got you locked in on a GPS with those things, and you have definite no-fly zones, you know. So I've got some projects where, hey, you know, just, you know, can't shoot this one. You can go through ropes and try to get permission, you know, from you know, the local airport or air traffic control and set it up, you know, that kind of thing, and get permission to bypass it. But I'd say 99% of the pools, it's fine, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm not really flying that high. You know, I was actually one of the podcasts, you know, on the way here, I was listening to Chris Anderson from Ledge Loungers, and he was right. He said something about, you know, why put the thing, you know, I think what did he say, 3,000 feet in the air? That was way, way overboard. But yeah, it does you no good. You can't even see the pool right. So I'm typically anywhere from 10 feet above up to, you know,
Yeah, you
50
definitely
feet,
wouldn't
100
want to
feet.
do that here. You'd see 50 other pools.
Right.
Yeah. Same shot.
So which one am I looking at? You guys.
and that happens a lot, to be honest with you. So, you know, it does you no good to get too high in the air with it. But
Right. So, you know, if somebody's going to hire a photographer, you know, how can they best prepare the photographer for a photo shoot? Because, you know, in doing this, we see a lot of websites. We even see a lot of manufacturers' websites and all kinds of different things. And we think that is definitely an area we can grow in. And this is kind of speaking towards professionalism in the way that you look and the way your business looks. And it's just, I don't want to say easy, but hiring a photographer to come out and take photos of the services you provide, which is, you know, if you're cleaning swimming pools, pool service and repair, obviously you want to get most of those steps in that you do so that you can show future customer what it is that you do. But you can use those photos on your website, your Yelp page, your Google page, Instagram, kind of spread it out a little bit because that needs to be a little bit more kind of phone organic type stuff. But it's really cool, all the different things you can do. But it's also important to understand that, you're in the pool industry, but a lot of other photographers that you might want to do things like this for you might not be in the pool industry. So it's better to prepare them a little bit, maybe having some kind of storyboard or script. It's like, I want, these 20 shots because this is what I'm going to do with them. So you think it's a good idea to have some kind of plan, before going into that?
Well, I can speak from my experience. I can tell you why a lot of the guys hire me, and after I do a job, they go, "Okay, we're always bringing you back." I've heard a lot of stories where people have said, "Man, we've tried everything. We've hired wedding photographers. We've hired, kids out of school, even, just everything, but never really been satisfied with the shots totally." But for me, what they like, I have a lot of builders that don't even come to the project. They give me the address. They tell the clients, "Hey, Jimmy's coming to town. We're sending him over. He'll be here this day." And I never even see the builder sometimes. I might stop by, eat lunch or something, but I'm working.
Right.
And I actually like to shoot that way without anybody around. Last night when you guys were hanging out, it was cool. Everything's fine, but we're talking and everything going on. I try to get in the zone, to think, because I'm there to be creative and, figure out the project. But that's one thing that a lot of guys like. I know how the service boxes work, for example, or I've got all the phone apps, and as long as I've got a password, I can log into the actual pool and control all of the water features and the lights and that kind of thing. That allows me to stand behind the camera and not have to do so much running around and just concentrate on shooting. And, I can still go to the service box if I have to and control it manually that way. But, a lot of times what they've told me is, if we hire somebody that hasn't spent the time to learn the industry, and learn how to do a lot of these things, then we have to go and babysit them, and it's a real learning curve, and I mean, here I am, I don't know, last year I think I shot like 150 pools, in the season from April until November, but, you got the year before that and year before that, so I've just done it enough. That's why I was joking last night. I was like, I'm not going to go over there and turn that service box. I got a bunch of service guys here. They all know how it works. But, I've taken assistants with me before, and, I've said, okay, you go down there and you got to switch it from, auto to service, and then you're going to look for this button and whatever. But then I wind up doing it myself, until they can learn it. But yeah, so my advice to people that are trying to shoot the pools, I think, I typically go in and I try to get money shots first, after flying the drone. I do that early. Drones don't work as well in lower light levels, so I shoot first when I'm there. And a big thing is I try to shoot the pools in the evenings. It's easier, and that's more for the customers or the clients, the homeowners. Because, if I'm there and I want everybody to turn the lights on in the house and I'm trying to be there at sunrise is what I'm saying. That's kind of going backwards. I can shoot sunset and sunrise. Essentially sunset is just the reverse of sunrise or vice versa. But waking somebody up at 6 a.m., with a photographer in their backyard's a lot tougher. So I only do it at sunrise. And if there's some kind of view, that really requires sunrise to get the perfect shots or the best shots possible, we do that. But lighting and timing is important. So I'll get to the pools at least 2 hours before sunset. And then that first hour is for me to fly the drone, learn the pool, look around, and kind of start picking shots, But then that hour, as a lot of you guys may know, that's golden hour, right? That hour leading up to sunset. And then what a lot of people don't know is as the sun sets, once it goes below the horizon, they call the next hour blue hour, right? And that's where your sky really kind of lights up, with all your pastel colors, depending on where you're at, on the planet. But so that's your window, where you really want to shoot because you get the best lighting possible. Now, you have to shoot past sunset into that blue hour or twilight because you got two things going on, when you shoot outdoors. And with these pools, you've got ambient light, you've got, your sun, or even after the sun goes down, you still got ambient light, with just our daylight that's bouncing around under the clouds. And but then you've got artificial light, and that's the pool lights, that's the house lights, anything on the property, landscaping lights. And the real sweet spot to hit is when the ambient light goes down low enough to where the artificial light comes up and matches it. And what I'm talking about is where the exposures are the same. And you got that like 10, maybe 15-minute window, depending on the project, where everything's just perfect. You know, I mean, you're shooting exposures where you're almost getting everything in a shot. So for somebody that's using a phone, let's say a builder that's just shooting, you know, a project on his own, that's that window, you know, right around where the sun hits the horizon and a little bit right after it. But same thing for a photographer, you know, out shooting pools, you know, that's your window. And they should know that already, you know, to an extent. It's just I deal with a lot of people or a lot of friends, you know, photographers. They're either a architectural or interior photographer, and they deal with lights of different colors. They're always indoors. You know, the only thing really ambient outside light they deal with is what they can see out the window.
Right.
Right. But then you deal with talk to a landscape photographer, you know, that travels the country or goes wherever, you know, to destinations and shoots these amazing, go to the Grand Canyon, you know, close to us, and you go up there and you're going to find 50 photographers every day, you know, standing on the edge trying to get that landscape sunset shot. But they don't have artificial lighting. So in the pool industry, that's important. And, you know, I should say looking at the pool during the daytime, you know, before the sunsets, and looking at the pool an hour after the sunsets, a lot of times they're two different projects. You know, I mean, it's a totally different look. So you try to capture that because the guys a lot of times designed it that way. You know, that's an important thing with a pool. It's like, hey, during the day it's great, but check out what it looks like at night. You know,
right?
It's a whole different ambience.
So, you know, and I want to kind of get back to this a little bit because I want to know exactly, because I think there's a lot of people that struggle with, you know, what type of photographer that they should use. And I'm talking more of people because there's only so much you can do. You can't take care of every service company, every builder, every manufacturer. There's only so much you can do. Maybe one day you can, but, you know, it's more really want to know like what type of photographer people should be looking out for. Maybe where can they find them? Where's a good kind of website where you can find a photographer? And just, I think important things to know are, you know, what kind of edits are they going to make to these photos? Because I think that's really important that you work with somebody that's not going to do too much crazy stuff to the photos, because there needs to be, especially for, you know, the type of photos that you do, you can't do too many crazy, you know, say vintage edits or something, because I need to know what the true color of the tile is, and I need to know what the lighting looks like, because that's pretty deceiving, you know, to take a photo of something and you make such crazy edits to it and you can get there and it doesn't look anything like that.
Right.
So, and I understand like your pictures look like paintings, but the best way I've been able to, you know, describe it is that it almost looks like when we see your photos, it almost looks like what you would see with your own eyes. Because even your camera, without any edits, gets a really good photo, but what you see in real life is like beyond 4K. It's like the real like thing. You can see all the color and beauty in it. And, you know, looking at your photos, it's kind of more like, you know, popping out, and it looks like this just, you know, crazy painting.
Yeah, so that's kind of two questions. The first, you were saying what kind of photographer? If it were me, you know, I mean, everything's on the internet pretty much. You know, I would Google. I would maybe go with architectural, you know, photographers. Maybe see who's shooting real estate, that kind of thing. But with the interior and architectural photographers, you're going to find people that have flashes, you know, that kind of thing. They're probably going to have more equipment and be used to that. But
if somebody doesn't bring a flash, are they not prepared?
No, I'm not going to say that at all. But it can just be so much more. You know, I mean, and you're going back to when I first started. You know, I've crafted what I do, you know, to make things the best. If you get there and there's not light, then you need to bring it. You know, so having a flash, you may use it sometimes, you may not. You know, more of the time I do for not just reasons of, you know, adding light, but adding texture to things. You know, I'll give you an example. I shot a pool for Randy Angel. I don't know if it was his project or Pool Environments. They kind of work together a bit. And I'm there, and it's an infinity, you know, edge, but I was standing on the front of it, and I'm looking back at these like laid tile stones, you know, they're the whole edge on the front of this infinity. It's going into a catch basin, and the shot was there. It was sunrise. I was there shooting. Sky was perfect. Stars aligned. You know, everything's looking great. But I looked at the tile and I just thought it was kind of flat. So what I did, I went and I shot. I popped flashes down the side of the wall of the tile. And that brought out all the texture. And you could see that in the photo right off the bat. I mean, it just really drew your eye to the stones. And next thing I know, I gave the edits to those guys. I think it was Randy that emailed me or copied me on an email to the company that built those. And they were like, oh, wow, man, can we use this photo or can we buy this photo from you? But they had not seen, their tile. It was just a really good photo of their product, So the flashes just aren't for adding light. A lot of time it's creating texture. I do that on grass a lot. I'll shoot across the grass to give it a texture where it's not so flat. You're trying, in photography, you work in a two-dimensional medium. You're looking at a print, think about it like a piece of paper, but the more I can add shading and lighting and create textures and depth in the photos, that holds you in the photo. So the only way really to do that is by adding light and choosing where you add it. So flashes are very important, but I'm not saying you have to, if you're out there and you're a photographer, you have to just go all flashes, to shoot. Sometimes you don't want it. It's overkill, especially during the day when they don't do as much, they don't change that much, when the sun's bright, noon, something like that. But again, that's why I shoot in the evening. So kind of your first question. The second was, what were we talking about at the end of that?
Well, I mean, and I'm going to do a write-up for this so that, because the podcast as a resource for information is, would it benefit a photographer like yourself if somebody wrote, the exact photos that they wanted? They didn't just get there and wing it. Does that help you at all? Like if you have an idea of it's like, I need 20 shots and I need does that help when you get there? You might not know what if somebody says, I need a picture of me, dumping, a pump basket, you might not know what that means, but it might feel better knowing that, okay, this guy knows what he wants.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think about that all the time. So again, for me, a lot of times the builders know they don't have to be there with me. However, what I will do, especially with designers, I'll get to the project and I'll say, look, you're busy, do your thing. I'll be there, count on that. But I'm going to get there a little bit early and call you. And they know the project well enough because they built it or designed it. They spent all this time to, make the final, product. But I'll walk around the project and say, hey, what's special about this pool to you? What kind of photos do you want? Is there anything I should concentrate on? Sometimes that can be some guy just built his first Lautner Edge pool, and he really needs photos of that to show his clients, and he's proud of it, maybe. Again, I think of Randy Angel all the time. Randy, I was on a project with him. We walked through it for like 5 minutes, and he had this recessed, like there were plants, like vases with these plants in it that was just recessed in this wall. And it was just a cool detail on the project. And the project had a lot, going on. But that was just something to him that he personally wanted to show. He just liked that detail. So I said, okay, cool. He's an artist. We'll get that for sure. But yes, you could have a list, like that. That helps. You're giving the customer what they want.
It probably helps you a lot too, because that if you send somebody something where there are 20 specific shots because you need them for your website or something, that that's what you're going to get. And if you're there during the photo shoot and a part of it and these boxes aren't getting checked off and it's like, hey, we missed one, because you don't want to, have the photographer send you a Dropbox of, 18 photos and it's like, where's 19 and 20? I need that. That's my shot for my About Us section. It's a picture of myself and my brother. That's the banger. Like, I know you took it. Like, what's going on here? But I think it's important that, because you should have a plan for everything that you do. And the photos are such a big part of that in showing people what you can do and what you're good at. So, just having that scripted in that way, I feel like it's easier for the photographer as well. Because it's like, we don't need to be out here all day because, you need to be allowed to be a little bit artistic for a cool photo. But there needs to be like, sort of an agenda. So you're not sitting out there all day long.
Yeah, the list helps. I think if you're a photographer that haven't shot pools, that kind of puts you on track. Let's say that. For me,
I think most people don't shoot pools.
Right.
That's more what I'm getting at.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so for me, I've just done so much of it. I kind of know what to look for, but I always ask, is there something on this project, whatever. Some guys tell me, hey, you're the photographer. And that's why I hired you. And I go, well, okay, cool. But, I'm trying to get a little deeper than that. I'm trying to help you up above and beyond, how could certain shots help your business more? What do you need on your website more of or whatever? But Yeah, so some guys just cut me loose, but I always ask, and that's where the conversation just naturally happens. And I go, okay, cool. I would have probably not focused on something that they mentioned, but I do. But yeah, you could go the list route. And I've had some people that just do that. They say, we want the pergola, we want this area, that area. I'll tell you, Ryan Hughes, if you're familiar with him, he's down in Tampa. And I shot one for him in D.C. this past season. And it was really cool because the backyard there in D.C., it had great landscaping, a lot of color to it. And the pool, I guess you say the tiles and the, the deck and everything, it all worked as a color scheme. But they named this thing Modern Tranquility. And his need, like what he told me, he just spelled it out before I even asked. He said, look, this thing's crazy, though, because every light in the project – the owner there, he builds web apps, right? So he made his own app for all of the lighting. I mean, I'm walking in with the typical apps that everybody has, but it wasn't the way this job went. I had to get with Ryan. Even said, look, just get with the owner because it's kind of crazy what he's got on his phone. But he could dial up and down and change color to anything on any of the lights in the project. Well, Ryan even said, he said, look, what I want you to do is show it naturally and turn all the lights to colors that match the landscaping, during the day and going into the evening. But he said the deal of this project was at nighttime, you can make this thing look like anything. Or you having whatever your favorite football team is or sports team kind of party, make the whole place look like their colors. If you're having a Sweet 16 or, a new baby's born, you want all blues or something for a boy, whatever, you could literally change the project, the look of it. So he said, man, last time I was up there and saw it when it got done, it looked like, a casino in Vegas or something. He's like, tell him just set it on that, But, yeah, and I would have walked in there with, I could have done anything I wanted to do, but I shot the project the way he wanted it to look, to show people this is possible. You can have a project where you can control the lighting to this extent. So
that's really cool. Is that the one he submitted for that award? I know that there was some kind of thing going on, and he was pushing up one pool in particular that I really remember pretty
well. There's one down in Tampa that I actually got to see and walk on the project afterward, and that was one that was on. This was before I met Ryan. That was one that was on one of the covers of Luxury Pool magazine, and then you get on the cover of that magazine, you're everywhere, instantly. But
your photo was just on there, wasn't it?
Yeah, I've had the past 2 issues or each photos of mine, and that's been a big plus, for me. I mean, that's awesome. In our industry, that's a huge. I mean, that's National Geographic, for us, essentially. But and then I actually got the pleasure of meeting Carol, the publisher for them, out in Vegas at the International Trade Show. She's awesome. She's somebody you guys might want to talk to at some point. She's kind of like the mom of the industry. I feel like she's been around for so long. She knows everybody. On the way,
I think we met her in Orlando. She was at their booth for like a brief second, but yeah, before we were really doing this full time.
Because they have like Ocean as well.
Yeah. I think they've got 4 magazines, total that they cover. But in our industry, typically, Ocean Home or whatever, a lot of times it's a pool or a house, showing a pool over an ocean, so on the covers. But yeah, she was checking on me. She was texting me actually on the way out here yesterday when I was driving in from Vegas, and she was like, all right, have you left LA yet? I'm just like, yeah, we're done. You'll get those photos. I'm sure he's going to send them to you. And then she was asking about how the Vegas jobs went. So she's a great person in the industry to know. But
that's awesome. So is there any, best practices for just taking photos, even with just your cell phone? I mean, I use my phone a lot, and so does Ty and Kyle. But is there any tips, rule of thirds, even because I know there's I think there's probably been some people that ask that, they're kind of a one-man show and they might be just taking care of a pool. How are they supposed to get that shot? Would you recommend, bringing a tripod or just, what do you got for us?
Okay, so that's a really broad question, right? But let's say no matter who you are, you guys, sitting here in the studio, let's say any pool builder you can think of, day to day shooting pictures of your kids. I don't care, but I've always told people just take a 101 photography class at some point if you have the time, and it'll change the rest of your life because you'll have to focus and start thinking about photos. But general rules kind of things. Rule of thirds, people talk about that. Instead of putting a subject just in the dead center of the photo, just shift it over to one side or the other. It kind of gives it a little bit of interest. I think rules are meant to be broken. You learn all those rules first, and then you turn around and some shots don't need those rules. If everybody just shot the same way, that'd always be the exact same photos, right? But rule of thirds is a pretty common one. One thing in photography school that they talked to us a lot about was before, and this is back again in film, when you got one click, and you didn't have Photoshop really, to take things out as easily and all that. But they would say, make sure you run your eye around the frame, okay? Because if just by shifting the camera, whether it's a phone or an actual DSLR or whatever it is, you shift that camera just a little bit, take out the distracting, whatever it is over on the right or the left, the frame, or
the guy picking his nose in the corner.
Yeah.
You didn't quite see.
Yeah. When you shoot people, for example, they used to tell us, make sure there's nothing annoying sticking out of their head. I've seen people make this point. They'll have somebody stand where there's this, bush behind their head, and it looks like the person in the photo's got an afro. Or you put somebody with a ceiling fan, behind them the way you're shooting. It looks like they got stars, coming out of their head. But yeah, you just have to really pay attention, look at what's going on. I think the best way, and Greg, I think you and I were kind of talking about this on the phone, a couple of days ago, but I think the best way to learn anything, and I'm not a big believer on either you're just born, with an eye. I've gotten better over the years, definitely, but I think it's something you have to submerge yourself in. And that could be, it's kind of like music, Even Jimi Hendrix didn't pick up the guitar, and he was just all of a sudden Jimi Hendrix, and everybody knew. He played and played and played and played, just like whoever you think is a great musician. We could go on forever on that. But photography is the same way. Painting, you could take that medium. You just have to do it long enough, and you get better. And then you start to study other artists, right? So photography is really easy because photography is everywhere. If you want to start studying, well, I'm not going to say pool photos. You can go to my Instagram account, right? But if you want to study architectural photography, go look at find a good Instagram account and just start rolling through the photos. Flip through a magazine. I tell a lot of builders and people I shoot for all the time, one pet peeve of mine that people don't do, and if I say this, you'll notice it in all of my photos, and it's more prominent in architectural photography. If an architect, well, let me say this first, you got to get everything straight vertically and horizontally. So if you flip through Architectural Digest and start really paying attention to those photos, kind of subliminally, people don't know until I say this, they look at the photos and they're thinking, man, all these are great. And they are, and there's all kinds of photographers, chipping in on that magazine, but they're trying to represent what the guy built and show it. If that architect made sure, and when they built everything, this beautiful project, everything's perfectly straight. The tile on the floor, all the lines, they're parallel, If you go out and you take your iPhone, even an iPhone, and you angle it up or down, everything gets distorted now. And I absolutely, it's like putting your fingernails on a chalkboard when I see like this beautiful project, but the camera was tilted up. And now all the columns in this pergola or cabana area, they're bowing out. Sometimes you get forced into a shot where you're up on a balcony or something, you have to look down, that kind of thing. But I take a lot of time to try to get the camera on the tripod or crawl over something or hang from something and get that thing perfectly level, where everything's true, in a shot. So
even shooting with, we all have iPhones. I don't know. What do you have?
I got an iPhone. If you're talking cell
You
phone.
can even shoot in grids, like to take, in the
Yep.
beginning. So if you have the grid feature on, it'll actually, you can line it. So if I'm taking a picture in this room where the banner is at the end, I could get that grid line like spot on if, that's kind of my subject matter. Something, the computer's going to kind of go down because of its shape, but it's like the subject matter. It's like right on that grid line.
Right.
And it'll just help out anyway. I used it for a little bit, but I kind of mess with me because I was like, I'm not going to see grids in my photos. I need to see the real photo.
Yeah, lighting, again, is always important. It's as simple as this. If you're going to shoot a picture, like a portrait of some people, I'm talking just with your iPhone. Hey, everybody get together. We're going to shoot a quick picture. If it's during the day, make sure that people's faces are towards the sun, not blinding them, but don't have people, in shadow with the sun to their background. That's going to make everything real contrasty anyway. But but I really think, other than just rules, I think you just have to really start using your eyes and studying photography. And I don't mean going to school for it. I mean, like I said, flipping through marketing media. Look at any magazine. Just pick up a magazine and start paying attention. you know, to how shots are done.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about it before, but have a separate Instagram account that doesn't do anything. It's just a bunch of followers of inspiration, where it's photographers, it's brands, it's different things like that. So it's like, need a little bit of inspiration and roll through it and be like, oh wow, that's crazy. You know what I mean? It's like the subway's kind of blurred out, and the subject matter, which is probably the person, is like just clear and focused. And then there's like maybe some weird thing going on over here. Like, it's really cool seeing all these different types of photographers in the world, because it's a pretty big deal now, because we have social media, and that's how we get our point across. It's not just words anymore. You kind of have to there's got to be some visual behind it. So there's all kinds of things that you can look at. But what was the photographer's name the black and white photographer you were talking to me about on the phone? You said it on the episode as well.
Ansel Adams, I think you're thinking about.
Everybody listening, go check that dude out, because that guy.
Did you not know who Ansel was before?
Dude, well, so some of those pictures, after I looked it up, I definitely had seen some of those pictures before, but I was just like blown away, because those were some of the raddest shots that I've seen.
Yeah, Ansel was the real deal. Even today, still, if you take just about any photography course, high school, college, something just locally that you can find. It was always, especially in film, that was 101 black and white photography with Ansel Adams. That was the book they gave you. And, Ansel's known for, he lived out in California, but he traveled all over the West out here in all these areas. And a lot of people back then, we hadn't really expanded out here, and they had not seen, Yellowstone, that kind of, some of the parks and things. He was traveling through that when there were no roads, there were no stores to stop by. He was just kind of a hiker and, out in wilderness and just trying to show the beauty of it. Well, then the story went on. If you really read up on him, he met with a couple of the presidents, and that's why a lot of those parks got formed. He just showed people, the rest of the West Coast, so.
It's even more impressive. You know what I mean? Didn't have a motorcycle, didn't have a car, this dude was
horseback.
Yeah, he was trucking it, man. He was walking to these locations, which is really cool.
Yeah, so we talked a lot about the builders and everything you do. Is there, for the service companies or smaller companies that mostly doing Instagram stuff, is there certain ways to frame a pool or focus on the water, or something you can give us a tip on, for those kind of people are just shooting maybe for their regular feeds and to get customers, for them to service their pools?
Well, so let me ask you a question right back at it. What do you really want to show? You want to show people cleaning, doing what the services are in the photos?
Yeah, some of those, and then maybe some of the before and after effects, of a storm pool and then a clean pool. You kind of want to mirror them together, or something like that, where you can show the quality of work you did, I guess.
Okay, yeah. So before and afters are always good. If you got calcium buildup on something, maybe I'm just going off the cusp here, but then show it before and then show it after, maybe close-ups. But if you're wanting to show, if you're trying to market yourself as a service, as what you do, I would go back to what we were saying earlier about what kind of photographer, and find a good portrait photographer that's good at working with people. Architectural and what I do, there's typically nobody there. This is just a blank canvas other than what's been built. So, but yeah, I would find somebody like that. A lot of close-ups, of actual work going on, what people are doing. Does that answer your question somewhat, or? Yeah,
I mean, just focusing on the water too. If you're taking a picture of a clean pool, just using the square option or whatever on the iPhone, or something that's going to be more for Instagram. Is there certain things you can do with the water to craft or shape it, or make the pool look a little bit cleaner besides editing options?
Because I know you turned off some features to kind of get that still water sort of shot. And I also noticed something else that I don't think a lot of people would have caught was, you knew that when we were taking that chlorine floater out of the spa, you're like, hey, if you could take it off this other way, so that but that's something I would do.
Right.
It's the details, because
so that it would drip water on the
it would
deck.
drip water there, and then you would see these spots, and it's not you might not think it's a crazy deal, but it's still kind of, it can be an eyesore when you see little things off like it. It's why is this spot here? You know what I mean?
Yeah, all the time I deal with that. If I get to a project and, somebody's in and say, hey, let me clean these leaves out, with a net, and next thing you know, they're dripping water all over this deck, and now I got a water line. Some of that I can take out in Photoshop, right? But I'm like, look, we go one way or the other, guys. We either keep it all dry or, we wet the whole deck down. Some guys want that. The problem with that is you have to continuously hose the thing down in between shots, as things dry. But I would think close-ups, like low shots for some reason comes into mind, things close to the water. I mean, obviously you have everything pristine, before you shoot like that. But
I think that's really cool. I don't think you see that too much. Like if you think about what we do, we're trying to make water, clear, safe, all these different things. But you got like kind of a nice close up where you might see deck, tile, pool, and the water's just like, see through, clear. You know what I mean? If I were looking at pool service company and one of their shots was just a really, really clear pool, that would be really good.
Yeah, I don't think editing wise, afterwards, so to say in the dark room, there's a way to really make the water look more clear,
Yeah.
But definitely get the water clear. I would push the envelope. Maybe it's just me personally, and it's not as easy to come by. I mean, I come from a scuba diving and commercial diving background, but I shoot a lot underwater. But I think underwater shots, might be kind of cool. For some reason, I'm seeing like 2 bare feet standing on a baja, on the edge or something, shot back just underwater. But if the water is really clear, I mean, you can show that off, But
and those shots they're kind of tricky. You might think like, oh, that's just sync a GoPro and, kind of get that shot. But there's a little bit more to it. I actually even rigged up, I put my video camera in Tupperware. It was like a real deep, it was like 2 feet Tupperware. Well, I saw a picture on Instagram. Somebody was messing with it, but they must have had something else. I don't know. Seemed like it was easier for them. But dropped it in there, and it was cool because, the water wasn't going in. I still had about that much water. And then I just had it in there, and I was just kind of like shifting around, kind of like, what do you call it?
Like a gimbal?
Like a gimbal, so to speak. And I was just holding on to the handles and like filming underneath it. And it actually wasn't too bad, but there's definitely like that camera you had, like with that picture of the California Rock Solid Tile shirt in it.
yeah, Jimmy Reed.
Yeah, like that camera looked like something like a surfer photographer would have out.
Yeah, that's a C-cam housing. I got a Nikon in it that I shoot with, and
Because can you get a housing for most cameras, like a water housing?
you can. It gets pricey for DSLRs because how computers and cameras are the same way. There's a new one coming out every 6 months, right? So they have to go back. If you need to be able to control every setting, every button on that particular model camera, then you got a housing that has to mimic every one of those buttons. So it's a kind of a luxury item, or just an expensive item, but I really feel like you need to be working in that to justify, paying the money for that kind of stuff.
Oh, I don't think anybody anytime soon is going to be buying one of those.
I haven't shown you the footage yet, but when we went scuba diving in Hawaii, that lady's camera was crazy tricked out.
Oh, really?
I haven't shown you the photos yet, but they're super cool because like with the turtles and framing turtles with people underwater. I'll show you the photos, but like her camera was like her lens was like this big. It was really cool.
Yeah,
to
it's
see
so
underwater.
cool.
You have
I'll check
to-
those out for sure.
What's interesting is a lot of those housings, they call that a dome, the big glass piece. And a lot of people, the one that you saw in the photo on Instagram, that's a 14 millimeter lens that's on that camera with the dome on it. 14 millimeters wide. The human eye sees about 50 millimeter. If you want to think about, perspective and, peripheral kind of view, just think about that. But 14 is pretty wide. And it's not total fisheye kind of thing. But here's the point. You have to have a dome. You have to have glass that's wide enough to not get in the shot. So you see these people and you got this huge, piece of glass on the front. And you go, look at that camera. Well, the camera's not actually that big.
Right.
But it's all about the lens that's in it. But, you can, I don't want to discourage anybody by what I said either. If you get on, I think Backscatter, if you want to know just a name that comes to mind, Backscatter, I think it's .com. They're a diving company, but they deal with camera equipment. But you can find cheaper housings, even for point and shoots and things like that, that I've seen people, you can get good results with, even underwater. And, that might be a twist for service guys. I mean, especially if you own the service business and you're giving a couple of guys a camera to use during the day, try to get some shots in the field, give them one that's in a smaller housing so that, they don't drop it in the water or get it wet, kind of thing. But I've seen decent cameras for a couple $100, but those are cameras that they've mass produced, and made a lot of so they can bring the cost down on.
Right. Nice.
So what do you do kind of to keep you motivated? I mean, you travel a lot, you're alone a lot, you have, a lot of responsibility by dealing with these high-end builders. What kind of keeps you motivated and keeps you going?
Well, that's a good question. Last year, I made it a point to try to schedule time off if I can, and by that I mean a day here, a day there. A lot of times when I schedule shoots, I'll say, okay, how many pools do we have? And the client may say, okay, we got 3. I say, all right, we're at least there 3 days, but depending on where they are in the country, if it's known for rain, that kind of thing, I'll say, let's at least add another day, and at worst I can edit, that kind of thing. And, or if we get a rain day, we got at least one day to work with, sometimes more. But if I get done with a job, like for example, last year, first time I came to Phoenix, I was here shooting for Premier Paradise. And I think we had I don't remember, 4 projects or something to do that week. Well, I scheduled 6 days, I think. And I got done editing. I just busted tail. I shot the project every evening. We had, no issues with weather. I got done and I had 2 extra days. So I went up to Page, Arizona, and I spent basically 2 days, partially, 2 days, spent one night. But I went to Horseshoe Bend the first evening for sunset and shot there. And then I went to the slot canyons there, and went on kind of a little photography tour they had there where they held people back and let you shoot. But to answer your question, any extra time I have, I just kind of committed to myself, all right, I'm traveling the country. I'm doing this. You got one life to live kind of thing, and might as well enjoy it as much as I can, and see places. So that's all across the country. Last year also, I was in New Jersey, and I had an extra day off. I jumped on the, I think it's called the Path Station up there. That's the transit station, subway station. I went to the new Oculus building. This thing on the outside looks like a dinosaur skeleton or something. It's an amazing piece of architecture. I can't remember the actual architect's name, but he's world famous. But anyway, I got inside and shot pictures of that. I just spent the day doing that until I got kicked out because you weren't supposed to be shooting pictures. I get kicked out of a lot of places.
So it sounds like it kind of helps clear your mind by shooting other things that you just enjoy. And
and the passion is photography.
Right.
I didn't just get into pools because I love photography first, and that led me into this industry. So I'm usually shooting or talking to Tilt in the hotel room.
But you do other things. You play the guitar and piano, right? You learn.
Yeah. It was great. At the end of this past season, I got home and I finally I got an acoustic Martin in St. Thomas. I think for the first 3 or 4 days, it's just about all I did. Just something totally different. Diving. I help the dive shop there in the winters when I'm there. So I'm on the boat or on the water almost every day. We joke the same thing about diving. It's like, what does a dive instructor do on his day off? He goes diving.
Yeah.
Same thing with photography.
Right. And Greg was saying you talk to your mom a lot too, and you guys are pretty close, right? And just
mom never remarried, and I always tell people, if I wish, if she was a little more technical savvy, I'd hire her as a secretary to run my schedule because she seems to know where I'm at more than I do. But yeah, I keep up with mom, man. Love mom. So
that's cool. That's really cool of you. A lot of people wouldn't take the time to do that, but it's important, so she's not too lonely and, keeps involved with your life. It's cool.
I always say usually, and somebody in this group I kind of felt was similar on Instagram, but I'm usually like God, family, then photography, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's what my bio is. But yeah, for sure. Do you have a mentor that's kind of been there for you throughout in this industry or in life in general?
Well, in photography, there's a lot of photographers that I like. There's one fella named Elia Locardi. Elia Locardi. You guys can find him easily on YouTube, but he actually travels. He and his wife, it's really interesting. And there's a YouTube video where you can kind of type this in and it'll pop up. You'll know it. It's about a 10-minute video on his story, but he and his wife, they were he's from the Keys in Florida, but they were in Miami. He was working, a graphics job, and they were doing the whole, buy the house, get the white picket fence, get the new cars, we got the dog, we made it, kind of thing. And then they realized they were just working and working and working, and they weren't really happy. So I think the story, with him, he went on a trip, first time in years, to, I think it was a wedding over in Italy, and he had a camera and he started shooting pictures. And then they got back and they said, man, what are we really doing, with our life? Is this what we really want to do? So they sold everything. And essentially, he just stepped out on a limb and started traveling. He would go 7 days, in a new place and research where to shoot. He does mostly landscape, and he'd shoot. And then 7 days later, they were on a plane going somewhere else. So when people ask me like, how do you really describe what you do? He coined the term, but it's location independent. Right now I'm always on the road, but he's been doing that for years now, and he's a pretty big inspiration, and amazing photographer. But
have you met him, or you just kind of followed his story?
I know him through social media.
Okay.
We've talked. It's kind of crazy. You send him a message. He's really good about getting back, but you never know where in the world he is, so you don't know. He could have just gone to bed, and you're getting up. So it's like, we'll hear from him in 24 hours, maybe. But
that's cool. What's the most valuable advice you've received on photography?
On photography, there's a group called F-Stoppers out of Charleston. That's a great photography website. I think most photographers know about those guys, but it's two fellas. They're an online. They have a lot of tutorials, that photographers go towards, not just anybody, but anybody can. But I've run into people that know them, and one thing is they were starting out. Just one quote kind of I've heard from them is like, photography is about making money. And, I see that a lot with artists. They're very good at what they do, but they're very poor at managing, their finances or a business. So I think that's probably kind of the best advice. It's like, you got to separate the two. You're so into your art and what you do and that whole process, but you've also got to make a living at it at the same time. And there's a lot that goes into that. You guys know, you guys have run businesses, so.
It sucks that that's like frowned upon, that somebody would try to be making money doing what they love. You know what I mean? It's like, why do you have to be considered a sellout or something like that? It's like you're providing value to people, and you're just doing your job.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of look at it. I see where you're coming from with that 100%, but I kind of feel that the most important thing is figuring out what you love to do, and then you never work a day essentially in your life, But, when I was in art school, everybody wanted to be the next whoever that just clicks a picture and has their own style or something, and then people just buy. They become this famous artist, but that's not reality. It's not really. That's not everybody can't do that.
Right.
So.
Well, you mentioned your favorite photographers. Who are some of those?
Okay, so there's a guy named Andre Cortez, Kertesz is his last name. Andre was in the 1930s. He lived long enough to see color film, but Andre was I actually had one of the head professors at the time or whatever at the University of Georgia when I was in the program there. They were looking at my photography, just things I was doing in class, and he brought him up. Said, you should go to, the library and check out this guy, get a book on him. And I have a book, on one of the only books or best books on his whole life story and everything. But they were seeing similarities in the way I shot, and then things of his, and they were right, and he was really good at breaking the space, is the way I say it. So we all look through a frame, a rectangular box, on your iPhone or whatever, any camera pretty much. And you're looking through that ratio, and the only thing you have to do is change what's in that frame. But he's very good at breaking up the space. But even with, being on the street, just shooting stuff like freehand, like you go to New York or something, he would be the kind of guy that could just really still concentrate on composition. He was just very good at it. And then he also did something that was really interesting to me, and I haven't done this yet in my life, but I'm going to. He had a friend that gave him back then fun mirrors like you see in a carnival, or like fun. You remember the fun house?
Yep.
Well, these things were like 200 pounds or something, and he's got them, but he had to use them in a studio. So what he would do is take kind of black cloths and things and he's shooting all black and white at this point, and with larger field cameras, with negatives that are 4 inches, by 5 inches or something. But he would hide the camera, but he would have models sit down and just sit in all these crazy positions where it might look like, I know it sounds weird, but it might look like part of their body. It's like the cartoons when Wile E. Coyote swallows the cannonball and his butt drops down, or Tom and Jerry, something like that. But he shot a lot of, portraits like that. But I really thought it was interesting, and I went to the UGA, the science library, and I looked up, science projects is where I found this, and it was like cool things to do, with science projects. But one was on how to build mirrors, with glass and the metal and everything, you put, coating the backs. And they had, with cheap metals, you could actually on a stovetop, heat this metal up, and they were telling you if you had anything left over, like any of the actual metal liquid down, you could put it in a like a flask, like you see in a laboratory, like a tube or a beaker kind of thing. Slosh it around and let it dry, and it would deposit a mirror on the inside of that object. So then, actually, I went to the chemistry department, and it's funny at UGA, everybody that's a chemistry major, they go through a glass blowing class, and because if they break things that they need to make just their own specific beaker or glass tubes for, whatever, they learn how to make that so they can do it in-house.
Wow. So
I was over there hanging out with some of these guys going, hey, can you, give me this way? And they're probably thinking something else. I want them to make all these glass products for, but that wasn't it. And I'm like, but I was telling them what I wanted to do was make kind of what Cortez did, but he was forced to do it in the studio because he was limited with how he could move around those mirrors. But take glass objects that have mirrors inside and travel with them. And, so you go to the Eiffel Tower, right? Everybody's seen the Eiffel Tower. Photographer, it's a huge, tourist destination, especially for photographers. You can only shoot it so many ways, right? But, I always thought with like macro lenses, I could set these things up and shoot off the reflections. And it makes it kind of anybody a Salvador Dali fan? Salvador Dali, all the kind of melted clock and weird reality paintings. It instantly turns anything you're looking at into this kind of abstract, different version. Sounds kind of far out, I guess, but yeah, it was just an idea that I had. So Cortez was in multiple ways, just a really cool artist, and he shot a lot through glass objects too. Later, when color came out, he's got some pretty famous pictures, and he's just somebody to look up, but a big inspiration for me. But very good at breaking the space. I mean, very good at composing and taking just a everyday, scene, but really breaking it down to make the picture interesting where you stay involved with the picture. You hold the viewer's eye to it.
Nice. Got to have that inspiration.
So with traveling a lot, and you would think that you read a lot of books or listen to podcasts or things. What do you kind of do to break up the time? Do you have any favorite books or podcasts?
Podcasts. Not really. Pool chasers, obviously, right? I'm actually, that's been one thing, as I'm driving, I've probably been through about 6 episodes maybe, I think now, but it gives me something to do, with all the driving. But I've listened to Joe Rogan a lot.
Yeah.
I know he's a pretty popular podcast, but
Right.
I was just listening to, and it's an older one, I'm sure, but it was Elon Musk, that was on there. And that was a pretty interesting one. To break up the time, I don't know, binge watch something on Netflix, but I watch a lot of documentaries, and then, and I'm constantly studying with photography. I'm looking up tutorials or, trying to get better in Photoshop, just working on crafting the business, throw the ball with tilt wherever I'm at.
Yeah.
He actually breaks it up a lot because no matter what I'm doing and how busy I get, if I don't exercise him every day, and take him somewhere, then he's going to let me know real fast. So,
Right.
He's good. He gets me outdoors even, when I'm supposed to be editing kind of thing.
cool.
He breaks it up.
Cool. Well, we'll kind of wrap it up a little bit. Can you kind of share with the listeners maybe where they can find your stuff on, website, Instagram, Facebook, email?
Yeah, sure. So it's real easy. The website's, it's Jimi Smith Photography, but I spelled Jimmy Jimi, like Jimi Hendrix. He died not the same year, but pretty much on my birthday. So, we've always broken it up with a common name like Smith, his last name, and then James, his common first name. Usually, I think I was on every hit list after 9/11. When I'd walk, they'd say, oh, well, you're flagged. You got to come up here. But it's Jimi Smith Photography.com. That's the website. And then same thing on Instagram, Jimmy Smith Photography. But yeah, that's the main 2 sources to find me. Facebook, I've got a page, business page too. Same thing, Jimmy Smith Photography. But
Well, where can somebody reach out to you if they want to? Is it best through Instagram or through your email or?
it happens all around the board. Always. I've answered Facebook messages and then scheduled jobs, Instagram stuff. My number is pretty easy to find. Out there on all that, and just shout at me.
Cool. Well, thanks for taking the time to come here with us today. You have a really great story, super fun, and it's been really fun getting to know you and listening to your story, through this time we've shared. And so we really thank you and appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, no, thank you guys. And look, I want to say again, I'm really behind what you guys are doing. Greg and I kind of talked a little bit. I'm the photographer amongst the pool industry, and I deal with people all over. Same thing for you guys. There's anybody, there's so many people, I should say, in the industry. You guys, the world's your oyster pretty much here. You
Right.
have to talk to people. So
Thank you very much.
I think we're all, in this group, from what he's told me, that we're all interested mainly in bringing the industry up, making it better. And that's what it's about. So,
Yeah.
Well, we
thank you.
appreciate the support.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
no doubt.
Thank you guys so much for listening. We know that your time is valuable and we appreciate you spending that with us. If you have any questions, please email us at poolchasers.info@gmail.com. Please take the time to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And if you have not checked out the Facebook group yet, please do so. It's awesome in there. Also, if you could take a little bit of time to go to Apple Podcasts and rate us and review us, that would really help us out there. So thank you guys so much for the support. We appreciate all of you so much.
See you out there, pool chasers.